State. This is the state's favorite podcast. We've had, as far as I can tell, no technical difficulties so far with this episode. Definitely didn't just waste about 28 minutes of footage and good conversation because, I don't know, I'm stupid with technology. But I'm your host, not bitter at all, Andy Coons. It's a pleasure to be here. Right over here to my left is Ben DeYoung. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing okay. I was just looking at the time. I was like, we've been podcasting for 2 hours. I mean,
we
we thankfully we did an hour on a guest spot on the
Right.
Libertarian Party of the United Kingdom, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
So our vocals are quite warmed up.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a fantastic conversation. The show's called Give Freedom a Chance. It's with Luca, I forget his last name, but Alex Zahovsky, who we've had on as a guest. He's the chair, or I think he goes by president. He's the president of the LP UK. Both of them had us on. Fantastic conversation. I don't know when it's going to drop, but it's called Give Freedom a Chance. So I'm sure me and Ben will post it all over the place whenever it does come out. So make sure you check it out. Yeah, so good conversation there. A lot of crazy stuff going on in the UK, all over Europe, really. And Ben, in our first attempt at this conversation, you said something that really stuck with me. It's, Europe is what the United States can potentially turn into, depending on how things go, and the choices that we make. And I think that is truer words have never been spoken. We like to sort of point fingers at the UK and be like, oh, you go to jail for tweets. And we've got people getting talked to by the cops in Florida because they said something against Israel. So we are not beyond that, and the red pill hemisphere of American politics is not immune to that either, because this is Florida, this is Ron
Right.
DeSantis,
Yeah, it is kind of crazy because we didn't even get to that point in the worst of the woke mob during Biden.
Yeah.
We didn't have cops showing up
Mm-hmm.
saying you misgendered somebody.
Yeah.
So the fact that the Republican states now are out woking the blue states
Yeah.
is it is kind of scary, because you would hope to have some opposition to censorship, and
Mm-hmm.
now we have both sides, and pretty much well, I say a big chunk of Americans being okay with censorship as long as it's censoring something that they don't like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a dangerous place to be when you've normalized censorship now. For most Americans are like, okay, I'm okay with it as long as it's what I want.
Listen, the Pulitzer Prize worthy rant that I was in the middle of whenever whenever OBS crashed, it is so I was talking about, witnessing the right wing become anti-war with Trump's first administration. Well, anytime he was campaigning, I heard Republicans talk about, like, we need to end these pointless wars. That's how, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene got as prominent as she became, because she was very anti-war. Same thing with Thomas Massey. Same thing with Rand Paul. It's like, what are we doing? We need to end these pointless wars. Trump was campaigning off of that sentiment, and I honestly think that's what got him elected both times. Is that the anti-war message really resonated with Americans, and I remember just being in shock and saying, like, Republicans are anti-war now. That's the anti-war party, after witnessing all the aftermath, all the chaos and death and horrors that happened after 9/11 in the Middle East. Now it's the Republicans that are anti-war, and then all of a sudden they're the ones who, every time Trump does something stupid in some foreign country, like kidnapping the Venezuelan dude, dropping bombs and on Iran, all this stuff, the 12-day war, all of this stuff, and they immediately are like, actually, here's why this is a good thing. Actually, here's why we should be an empire. Here's why we should take control of our hemisphere. And it's like, what? The most spineless, like, I bet you every single one of them, when you shake their hand, it feels like a dead fish. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the most, it's the most cowardly, spineless. Like, yeah, we are an empire, and it's like when a weak kid realizes that he's got a big stick, you know, and just watching them flip flop and have absolutely no principles and holding Trump to no standard whatsoever, not holding him to any of the things that he promised.
Well, it's even, I know we're going to get into the kind of the shootings in Minnesota, but it is kind of the, well, we have to be okay with that violence, because if you're not okay with the violence, that means you don't want deportations of illegals.
Right.
And it's such a false binary. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, we have to be okay with Trump doing whatever it takes, because it, it, otherwise it'll support the liberals, and we can't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
And it's just so stupid and so narrow minded that you have to, it's either one or the other.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of people argue from that point, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you, 5?
Yeah.
It's not chocolate or vanilla. Like this, you're not, you're an adult. It's not black and white. There are, there's rooms for legitimate criticism, even if you haven't changed your principles.
Right.
I mean, just because you don't want Americans shot by ICE doesn't mean, yeah, you're opposed to, removing the illegal immigrants.
Right.
It's such a frustrating. Also, there's just still such a cult of personality around Trump, that
Yeah.
people are just like, I'm a Trump guy. I bought the hat. I got the
Yeah.
T-shirt. I have the flag, and therefore I have to support everything he does. It's just, it's so it's so ridiculous, but it explains why we're here.
Yeah.
Is it's just,
It's
what's it? Politics is downstream of culture, and if
mm-hmm.
culture is that stupid, you're gonna get ridiculous politics.
Well, so I don't really think politics is downstream from culture anymore. I think politics has become culture.
Is driving culture.
Yeah, our culture is political now, you know?
Yeah,
And
it's a team sport. I mean, it really
hmm
is. We've gotten to that point where it's like, and it's almost a religion as well, which
yeah.
is, it's very scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this is why I really think that we are barreling towards civil war, because it's like, you know, left wingers are not immune to the same spineless stuff that the right wingers are doing now. You know, they're not immune to that whatsoever. You know, and just like, I mean, we've seen them all of a sudden become super pro 2A advocates because of Alex Preddy getting killed. You know, it's that both sides, they will immediately abandon their principles, depending on who's the one getting shot. You know, and so it's like, I think when you have two major factions in the United States with that sort of mindset, that's when I'm just like, oh, we are kind of screwed. I don't think there's an off ramp. You know, I think this is going to come to a head with some kind of major civil conflict. You know, and I don't see a way around that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also one of the reasons why that, it's inevitable that we're going to attack Iran again. Is
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's this idea, especially in the boomers' heads, like Trump, where if I start a war and we get Americans killed, then there's going to be this rah rah rah, like support the flag, go USA.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think. I think Americans are. I don't think we're going to fall for that again. But I think they're going to try. So that's where, I do have some hope in the fact that I think Americans are just so war weary that doing it again in the Middle East is just going to go over horribly. And
Hmm.
hopefully, maybe that's something that we can unite around, the left and the right, at least parts of the right, to say, no, we are not going to send our kids to die in another war.
Yeah.
I have hope for that. But to your point of maybe a civil unrest, we're definitely seeing plenty of that.
Hmm.
And something I think that I mentioned on the UK podcast is we've demonized the other side to the point now where it's okay to kill them, and
Yeah.
we're justifying killing them.
Hmm.
And that is a scary point to be at, where we have you view your neighbor even as an other or a less than
Hmm.
because of their politics.
Yeah.
Like that is the next step before a civil war. You have to be able to demonize that other group to the point where it's the world would be better off if they didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I think we're scratching at that door.
Yeah. I think this is what, especially left wingers, this is what they have to realize. If it comes down to civil war, I think the line is going to be drawn between a right wing government and left wing American citizens. All right. If this kicks off before Trump leaves office, but even then, a majority of cops are right wing, a majority of the military is right wing. I think it's going to be even if the president's a Democrat, I think it comes down to a right wing government versus a left wing population. And the right wing wins every single time. Even if the government stayed out of it and it was just left wingers and right wingers, like citizens fighting each other, the right wins every single time. They have all the guns, they know how to use them. They also, for the most part, know how to like survive out in the wild, you know? And so there is no situation where the left comes out on front or comes out on top. And so what left wingers have to realize is like, listen, um, this is not a fight that you want, and um, like Republicans or right wingers, people in the libertarian sphere, especially like, um, that does not mean that like your right wing dad wins. You know, it doesn't mean he wins. It means the government wins, you know, because the government's going to come in and assert control. And we're going to see a lot more Renee Goods and a lot more Alex Preddies. And we're not going to win against them. So,
Well, like every government program is, once they have that control, they're not going to give it up.
yeah.
So there's going to be more justification for a surveillance state.
Hmm.
Then they could look down at, like, well, we need a social credit score, because if you're not a good citizen, or if you're pushing back against the government, we need to be able to debank you or restrict your travel, or that's it's just breeding totalitarianism.
Yeah.
And sometimes I kind of wonder is if that's not the point, right? Because ICE could could have gone to Texas.
Hmm.
They would have been welcomed in Texas, and they
Hmm.
could have cleaned up Texas, and all the illegals down there, but they didn't. Where did they go? They went to a blue state and they caused chaos.
Yeah.
That has to be on purpose,
Oh, yeah.
because there's so many other things you could do with illegals. Like, the government could, like, penalize businesses that hire undocumented. You could eliminate all handouts. Republicans just voted for, what was it, $5 billion to continue funding all of the handout programs. Rand
Hmm.
Paul just talked about it. They're like, we know this is all being embezzled, but half the Republicans voted for it again.
Yeah.
So this is not accidental. I mean, there is definitely a big part of it that's just because of ineptitude and stupidity, but there's still clearly purpose to a lot of these actions, and I think it is because they know if we cause enough problems, we will be able to walk in with the solutions, and the solutions are going to be horrific.
Yeah.
What was your takes on the I don't know if saying murders or killing would get us flagged on YouTube, but, like, when I saw the first one with the car, like, they were saying, well, she was clearly going to hit him, but then I was like, it really looked like the wheels were turned,
Yeah.
like she was going around him. Um,
Or she was trying to, because like he it depends on which angle you look at. It's hard to see how the wheels are from the angle that's like behind the car or like beside the car. The thing from, or the angle from the actual officer's like body cam, that's where I'm like, okay, it does look like he got hit. But and I don't remember who it was that said this because my memory sucks. But there was somebody who's like, it, left wingers see an innocent woman getting gunned down by like this federal thug, and right wingers see this like public menace getting, uh, who tried to run over a cop getting justifiably killed. And he's like, I am seeing, and this is the take that I agree with the most. He's like, I'm seeing two people who are in a situation, a very, very high tension, high stress situation, reacting, and everything just happens in the most unfortunate way, you know? And because from the body cam footage, it does look like she hits him. It like you can hear like an impact, but I don't think it was intentional. I think she was just trying to get out of there because I think they had their weapons drawn. It scared the crap out of her. And it's what really bothers me is that even the big loud Christian voices out there are like praising this ICE officer or defending the murder of this woman, or the killing of this woman, however you want to define it, doesn't matter. But it's like even a lot of the loud Christian voices are talking like that. And it's like, can we just stop for a second and acknowledge that, like, hey man, it sucks that an American was killed in this process. It sucks, you know?
well, even the lies, like Trump posted right off the bat that the officer was in the hospital struggling for his life because of like punctured lungs or something. But
Mm-hmm.
if you watch the tape, the guy that killed the woman was just walking perfectly fine after the woman was shot and crashed the car. There
Mm-hmm.
was clearly, I mean, that's what's crazy is the propaganda, the blatant lies, where it's just like, hey, why don't you just admit this is a crappy situation,
Yeah.
and we should stop putting people in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
But the I think they create these situations because they want this type of chaos, and
Yeah.
I just really wish that people would start to wake up that it's us versus the state. It's not us versus each other. Cenk Uygur was just on with Tucker Carlson, and he made that point kind of over and over again because he's like, if me, kind of a raging liberal, can sit down with you, the biggest right wing person, and have a good podcast where we can start talking, that's what the
Mm-hmm.
government is mostly afraid of,
Mm-hmm.
is the populace to stop fighting each other and start fighting them. And that's I hope those conversations still can continue, and that's a great place for a libertarian to be, because we can mediate those kind of conversations. We don't have to, because we're not in there. We are kind of a perfect balance to say you both are stupid,
Yeah.
or you both don't want another war,
Yeah.
or you both don't want these killings.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to fix that? And I it is scary, and is black pilling, is the current culture, the current times that we live in. I do see that there is hope. Is it too little, too late? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. I
But have you looked into the second killing? Because I haven't done a big deep dive on that, outside of the fact that I know he was carrying a gun. He had an extra clip.
Mhm.
A police officer removed his gun from him. I don't know. Somebody was saying that the gun he had was prone to going off if dropped.
Um,
And they were saying that that's maybe why the cop fired, because if somebody dropped his gun and it went off, then they thought, I'm to me, that he was clearly unarmed. He was on the ground. There was like 7 cops around. I don't know how you can justify that one at all.
Yeah. Well, and the justification that they're using is like the later footage that came out where he kicked the back of the SUV with the ICE officers and it broke the taillight off, you know? And they're like, see, he was like aggressive and he was threatening, and it's like he kicked a taillight. Is that worth a death sentence? Like, I'm sure that if me and this guy sat down at a table together and we went through all of our political beliefs, we disagree on most things, you know? And I'm sure he's nobody that I would like associate with freely. But still, the crime he committed was kicking a government vehicle. All right? And every excuse that I've heard, and this goes back to like people that I used to have a lot of respect for, like Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh has had a garbage take on this,
On
every
all of it. On
on
the ICE
all of it.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like he's had some terrible takes. Like I think Tucker was fairly level headed about it. He definitely didn't. You know, he definitely wasn't like uh what's the word that I'm looking for? Like,
Celebrating it.
yeah, he definitely wasn't celebrating any of these people dying. Um, but man, it's just been all of the right wing voices have just been so disappointing in this because nobody has just stopped and been like, man, it sucks that somebody died, you know. Even if it wasn't like an American, if it was an illegal that they were trying to deport, that got shot, man, can we just stop for a second and be like, that is really tragic, you know? It just
Yeah.
sucks.
Well, and it's I don't think it's ironic that it was the Somali fraud in that same area. Like, do you think that this was just to cover that? I just don't see. There's just so many coincidences these days where you're like, this had to been purposeful,
Yeah,
um, because nobody's talking about the fraud anymore. The Republicans and Democrats are voting for more of it. So it is just kind of crazy that how quickly they can change the topic of conversation. I mean, that's the Epstein file dump yesterday, and there's Trump's all over it. Um, so what are they going to do? They're probably going to bomb Iran this weekend or next week because they
mm-hmm,
need a diversion.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that I don't. I'm really hoping that's not going to work with the Epstein stuff, but it's just amazing how quickly they can turn people's attention away from something that they should be focusing on
Yeah,
to a distraction of something else.
yeah. I mean, luckily, and I'm not really talking about pundits anymore, but like um just regular folks out there. Like, so much of the population has become aware of the format, of the script format. It's like, hey, um there's whether it's the Epstein files or something else, like if we're getting close to like something about the Epstein files, talk about aliens, bomb another country, drive all the attention towards this one thing. But like they've been trying to do that for 10 years with Epstein, ever
And
since
it
he
hasn't worked.
and it hasn't worked. People are still like, hey, what about the Epstein files? Hey, who killed Epstein? Nobody believes that he committed suicide. you know Definitely not Cash Patel or Dan Bongino, as we saw in their hostage video. But like, nobody believes that. And so I guess that is sort of the white pill, is that we know what the format is, we know how the script works, we don't believe it. And whenever you do start bombing another country, we're still going to be asking about the Epstein files. We're still going to be asking about the Somali fraud. Maybe the pundits aren't talking about it, but they're talking about it in the comments. You know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. That is something, especially with Epstein. It is it is a not a partisan issue. Like, there are enough of the Republicans who, I mean, there's still every once in a while you see an idiot going. I think even was it Laura Loomer. on X saying this is all fake. You know, the whole stuff with Trump being implicated in the documents, that's just a Democratic hoax. But most people are like, all right, the truth is coming out, and even that could be, it is turning people to understand there is an elite and then there is us,
Mm-hmm.
and the elite is the enemy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, Epstein was a perfect example. Like, you didn't see Thomas Massey's name in those files,
Nope.
but you definitely see a lot of other people's, even the
Mm-hmm.
ones that kind of slipped, because I think there was a dump that they, I don't know if they recanted, but I remember seeing, there's just so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the more that people tease out of these files, the more they're going to start demanding answers and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't happen, even with just the teasing that we've been getting of the fully redacted files, I think that's going to cause more and more people to realize the truth, and it's us versus them. And I think that is, at least for me, that is a white pill.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I tell you what, not to just kind of go off in a different direction, but you want to know whose name I just found the most surprising, and I'm not gonna lie, the most hilarious is Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is in the Epstein files.
Yeah, that is not something I would have imagined.
Yeah,
um
Bill Gates 100%. Stephen
yeah.
Hawking, I'm just like, what are you doing, bro? What are you getting out of that island? Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, um yeah, it's scary times. There definitely is a white pill in there somewhere. It all feels very much black pilling, but um I think this is one of those things. I think this fork in the road is um something that our country has to get to. I think we have to get to a point where we go, are we going to be, are we going to be an empire or not? You know? And I think really either one of those roads, whichever one our country goes down, because if we go down an empire, where it's going to collapse. I mean, we've been an empire for almost a century, you know, so it's like it's going to collapse regardless. And so, um, I think it's what happens on the other side of that. Like, how are we going to rebuild after everything collapses? You know,
Yeah, that's,
but
well, even with Nick Fuentes recently, like, he's really lost me on this rah empire
yeah,
cheerleading that he's been doing. Like, we
yeah,
have every right to go into Venezuela and take their oil. It's just, it is quite boomerish for him to be that way. I mean, I guess it can't be totally surprised with his, praising of Stalin and Hitler. And
mm-hmm.
he is a fervent nationalist. But it is ironic that he also claims to be, God-fearing Catholic,
Yeah,
because how do you square that circle of, like, we can kill and we can steal? I just, it'd be interesting to see if somebody could actually push him on that.
yeah,
But that's
yeah,
that's also kind of the Daily Wire people's, takes, and they're claiming to be Christian too.
yeah,
So you definitely kind of see where people's true loyalties, or where they're really coming from when you face situations like where we're at today.
mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I mean, if I dwell on it too long, if I dwell on this stuff too long, that's when I feel like almost just like depressed, you know. But I think the thing that I keep coming back to is um I think we are I think we're focusing on the wrong people, you know. Whenever I go to work, um I work with a good amount of like left wing and right wing people. Um And it's like anytime there's something in the news about any sort of government action, I get a pretty consistent reaction from both liberals and conservatives at work of like, I don't believe that, you know, I don't believe what they're saying. I think that's the thing that kind of keeps me tethered, from just going fully like, oh, it's hopeless. It's like, no, it's not hopeless, because the regular people out there, both sides, are like, everything they're telling us is BS, you know? And so it's like I think we get into a habit of looking at the figureheads, looking at the people that we see all over the internet, all over TV, you know, and we're looking at them when we should be looking at regular people. It's just like the thing that Dave Smith would say. He'd be like, when you live on the internet, you think that there's this huge like divide between like white people and black people, but then you go to the grocery store and there's a little old lady who can't reach a can, and there's a tall black guy who's like, oh, let me get that for you, you know. And it's like that's so much that's a much better representation of reality than, seeing all the videos of like black teenagers going and just beating people randomly in the street, you know. So I don't know. I think that this is all going to collapse, and in a way, I'm like, I think it's kind of a good thing, because I think maybe collectively we've learned enough lessons from, post war, or post 9/11 U.S. foreign policy, that when we rebuild this thing, maybe we could rebuild it into something that's much more reflective of like what the founding fathers intended, you know, or like actually get back to that kind of spot, or national divorce. When it collapses, we all go our separate ways. Hey, good luck to you, I don't think, like, the biggest critics of national divorce, Tim Pool being one of them. He's always like, well, what if Colorado decides to shut off California's water? It's like, they won't. Okay, there's rivers that run through every country in Europe. All right, and Lithuania isn't threatening to, like, hey, we're gonna turn the river off. you know like, to me, it's such a stupid thing. It's like, what if they turn off the river? You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not a realistic thing. Colorado's not going to do that, you know and it's like, if they did, then yeah, there'd be some justification for some repercussions, but like, they're not going to do that. That is not a realistic thing, you know.
Yeah, even kind of going back to Minnesota and everything that's happening there. I think Robbie made a good point on part of the problem where he talked about like the federal government could have just they could do a hands-off approach and
Yeah.
just be like, Minnesota, you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You want this, we're not paying for it, so you're not going to get any more aid.
Mm-hmm.
We're cutting you off of federal funding. You're on your own, because if
Yep.
at some point it's only going to implode, they're going to crash and burn. um, and that's what the whole purpose of the United States was supposed to be: sovereign states
Mm-hmm.
that had the ability to make bad choices, and then people could be like, I'm out of here. And so then you have some states that are excelling. It's capitalism, in
Yeah,
government,
a
because it
free market
forces them
approach to
right
state governance.
to governance. Yeah. And that's, I'd love to get back to that, but
Mm-hmm.
there are people that, kind of cry out like, I mean, even I follow Colonel Douglas McGregor quite a bit. He's really
Yeah.
great on foreign policy, but he wants the army to come in and take over all of the states, and like a massive boots on the ground effort. And it's like, but there are people that come from it from a nationalist perspective, and they have this ideal of like the American government is some force for good. And that's, to me, that's the scary part on the right, is the people who want they want um people locked in their homes and or curfews. They want tanks, driving down the street, um, to somehow install law and order. And it's like I'd much rather let certain states fall off a cliff than
Mm-hmm.
having tanks in every street.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like if they completely like withdrew aid from Minnesota, Minnesota turns conservative real quick, you know, like real quick. If it's like, oh, my state taxes are now 40% of my income, not just the federal, you know, I'm trying to survive on 15-20% of my paycheck, then man, people get real nationalist and real conservative very quickly, you know.
Yep.
And that's just, I mean, that's just sort of a natural thing about capitalism and about free market economics, or free market sort of a free market mechanism. um is just people naturally start to like be like, oh, I'm gonna protect my stuff, and I don't know, it just seems to trend more conservative, you know.
Once you introduce the too big to fail idea, I mean, there's
Hmm.
always that backstop in business. There's always the Fed, in state, in government. There's always DC. So like like even California has just gutted itself, but there's always money coming in from Washington. There's
Yeah.
always like let the let the bad states disintegrate, and because to your point, they're going to self-correct pretty fast when they lose half of their population, and the rest have to be taxed at 60%
Yeah.
just to maintain all their social services and their government programs. uh, like that's yeah, and then you don't have to have people dying. You don't. I mean, maybe they would. They would be riots on the street because people can't eat. But and then maybe that's why they don't do that, because then it does turn into an us versus the state, because
Yeah.
it's so obvious and so clear.
Hmm.
Um, where if you always have a bailout, then you can still just argue over you know gender ideology. It's
Yeah.
always just a distraction.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen the comic where it's like, I think it's all these people that were protesting, what was it, it was like they were protesting the big bank bailouts.
Back in '08.
Yeah, what was that movement called? Or like 09, 010, 010, 2009, 2010, something like that.
Something
What was
Wall
that?
Street.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm thinking Wolf of Wall Street. But yeah, it was DC. It was the Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is all these people, they're protesting, during the Occupy Wall Street movement, and then they're like, introduce identity politics. And then everybody
Racism.
just started, yeah, like everybody started like attacking each other. Nobody was attacking the real enemy, you know.
Yeah, I think Dave Smith probably talked about that, but because
Hmm.
he made a very good point. Like we had the Tea Party, which was taking over the Republican
Hmm.
Party, of much more of a libertarian bend to it,
Yeah.
and it was a real threat. I mean, that's where Thomas Massey came from. And then you had Occupy Wall Street. You had the leftists saying these institutions are corrupt,
Hmm.
and it was the people rising up against the state and state apparatuses and state benefactors. And yeah, they couldn't have that, and so they clearly turned up the volume on racism, sexism, all of that. That's all the news just started talking about. I mean, what was
Hmm.
that? Was Operation Mockingbird, wasn't it? Where they found out the CIA was pretty much controlling all of mainstream media back
Yeah.
in. I remember. I think it was Operation Mockingbird.
I
That
think it was Mockingbird.
clearly has that's a program that's still going on today, and
Yeah.
it is to your point earlier, but like it is more and more people are waking up to
Yeah.
it being like,
Well,
I
in
just saw
the
this on the news and going, I don't believe that.
yeah. Well, even with the identity politics stuff, like even that has kind of like started to really fizzle out. Like nobody, like anybody who's like, oh, colonizers, like nobody takes that person seriously, and it's become an entire genre on social media to have clips of some retarded college girl, with pink hair being like, oh, my ancestors were colonizers and blah 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 blah, and just getting mocked relentlessly, you know, like that's a cultural, like that's a part of our culture now, is mocking these people relentlessly,
Right.
and so it's like the power that they had, the stronghold that they had over our culture for like a decade is either coming to a close, or is like, these are the death rattles of like the woke culture, and I think they tried that. It worked for a while, but now it's back to like, hey, it doesn't really matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Like, life still sucks. What's going on? You know?
Yeah, and I really hope that that continues. But even with my kids, like, they go to a public school, and there's still of like, well, this 12-year-old is transsexual, identifies as non-binary, and this person has they them pronoun. Like, it is still out there, and hopefully it is on the decline, because the whole group think, like, this is how I identify with this group,
Hmm.
and that's how instead of the individualism of like, this is just who I am. um I really hope we can get past it, because I am scared for my kids. I was even talking to a coworker, and he's dating somebody that works, that I think manages, a chain of coffee shops,
Yeah.
and she has to be so careful in her language of gender ideology. And
Yeah.
that's the big one now. It's pronouns and gender ideology. And it's amazing how she can keep track of who wants to be identified by what. And even in just casual conversation, switches, instead of her, she refers to as them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I really had hoped that we'd see a quick elimination of that, and it's still holding on. And I
Yeah.
really I'm nervous that it's going to be baked into the culture, and that's how we have to live moving forward. Now, if we do have a big financial collapse, and people are more worried about where they're going to get their next meal than having somebody misgender them, maybe that turns things around. But I think we've had two generations that are kind of growing up in this woke BS, and I really hope it's not being, like I said, it's not getting baked in.
Yeah. Well, and it's I mean, by the younger generations, is being flat out rejected. You know, like Gen Z is way more conservative than millennials are, and they do not care. That not only do they not they don't care about hurting people's feelings. They don't care about social taboo or anything like that. They're just like, you're not a woman, you're a man, you know? And so I think that what we have to do in large part is just reject that, We just have to be like, oh, I have a coworker who is a they them, and they want me to call him by a pronoun that makes no sense in context whatsoever. I'm not going to do that. You know, I will treat them with respect. I am not going to capitulate on calling them a thing they are not. Okay, I'm not going to support a delusion. You
Right.
know, and it's like, and my thing is, I have always come from the perspective of like, there's something about the trans ideology, or the transgenderism, that I have kind of found relatable. And maybe it's because I've had this like lifelong battle against depression, and I know that whenever somebody is really really depressed, you can convince them of anything, as long as it gives them just a little hit of dopamine, as long as it gives them a little tiny hint that like, hey, this might be the source of all your problems about why you feel as bad as you do, you know and so when you have somebody who's wildly depressed, they don't know why, because it's a chemical imbalance. There isn't always a why to why somebody's depressed. It could just be, hey, your brain chemistry's off, you know?
Right.
But when you go through that for years and years and years and years and years, because humans want to figure things out and they want to figure out why they feel the way that they do, when someone comes along and they're like, I know why you feel that way. It's because you were born in the wrong body, you know? And my thing is like that is a hateful thing to do to somebody. To be like, the thing that's wrong with you is you are fundamentally incorrect all the way down to your DNA, and that you were actually supposed to be born this way, you know? And it's the exact same thing that people do to young black boys and girls by talking about white privilege, by saying, well, you're not privileged because you're not white, and so therefore there is a ceiling that you will reach and you can't go any farther because white people are preventing you from doing so. And it's like, imagine the kind of psychological damage that does to a little black kid. And they go, oh, I'll never be able to be successful because white people won't allow it. What kind of, like, how it, first of all, it immediately tells that kid or communicates to that person, like, I have no self-worth. I have no inherent self-worth, you know? And it's my like, I absolutely, I refuse, if I refuse to um capitulate on pronouns. And it's because, first of all, you cannot allow the domination of language and the meaning of words. You cannot you cannot give that up. That's what the communists did. That's how the communists took over, is they were allowed to change definitions to fit their narrative. They were allowed to take control of the language. You can't allow that. But also, 40% of these people kill themselves, because the problem is not that they were born in the wrong body. The problem is that they are depressed and they need therapy, and they might need medication, that, like, they need cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what they need. They do not need to be chopping off body parts. They don't need to get their boobs cut off. Like, that's insane. We're not only allowing but encouraging these people to mutilate themselves. Like, if you've seen the female to male trans people who have like their forearm skin taken off to make a fake penis, you know, and you look at that, and I look at that and it breaks my heart, because I'm like, that is somebody who is suffering, who has been lied to, you know. And so
Well,
it's
can you
like,
imagine one day saying, I made a mistake, but
mhm,
you'll never be able to go back. You'll never be able to have children.
that is existentially terrifying.
Oh, I would end my life too, because, like, I mean, the amount that they've ruined.
Hmm.
And going back to even to the pronouns and stuff, like, I don't remember who said it originally, but the term suicidal empathy. And it's a
Yeah.
it's a really good term, because there is just this idea that we have to be kind to everyone, even to the point of facilitating their delusions.
Well, it's not kindness, you
Right.
know? Like,
It's how
being
it's viewed. That's how it's viewed.
empathetic to the point of destroying yourself, or destroying your community, or destroying another person, you know? Because you don't want to tell them no. You're too afraid to tell them no, you know? And it's like, yeah, I understand when you're at work and there's this new HR rule that says that you have to call this dude with an Adam's apple by the name Cheryl, and you have to use he she pronoun, or she her pronouns. And it's like, listen, it's scary. It is scary to look at a situation like that and be like, am I willing to lose my job to do this? And it's like, I on some point it's like, yeah, I get that fear, because I would be terrified to lose my job. But at the same time, it's like, I can get another job, you know? But if I capitulated, and then this trans person offs themselves, I I some of that blood is on my hands, because I didn't say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to this person. you know?
Yeah, it's definitely tricky, and like I said, my concern is it being baked into the culture now? I really had hoped it would be kind of a flash in the pan of a cool thing that everybody was into, and then it would just kind of die off. But
Yeah.
maybe it just depends on where you're at. But like I said, the fact that my kids have to deal with it, and that's just the last thing that I want them feeling like that's normal.
Yeah.
Because it's not. It's only been what 10 years maybe where it's being, well, probably more like the last 4 or 5 that it's been heavily pushed. But I just don't want it.
Well,
I don't want the normalization.
yeah. And I think that comes from you having conversations with your kids, you know, but like, um, I think a conversation about that, like, I mean, jokes are one thing, me and my boys love to make jokes, but if we're having a serious conversation about it, I think it should always be rooted in, listen, I'm not using these pronouns. I'm not following these made up rules because I actually care about that person and their well being, you know, because I refuse to lie to that person, you know? And I think as long as you frame it, I think as long as it's framed like that, you know, if you're raising your kids right, which I believe you are, but if you're raising your kids right, if they find themselves in a situation like that, they're gonna be like, you know what, I was taught by my dad to care about these people, and caring does not mean that you go along with a fantasy. It means you tell them the truth. You know.
Yeah, yeah. It's got to be tough too because even like one of my daughters, one of her friends was a furry,
Mm-hmm.
and my daughter's very has a big heart, and so she was dabbling in that herself. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you're not an animal, and you're not going to start acting like an animal. This person is sick,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not like, you can still love them, you can still be their friends, but you don't need to support their delusion by becoming delusional yourself.
Right.
And having those conversations, yeah, it's very important. It's sad that it even has to happen. um but that's the fact that it's even being allowed in school, and it is crazy because it is not, it's exactly the opposite of what like therapists have said for decades, is you have to help these people escape the delusions, not have the delusion take over their entire personality.
Yeah. Yep. You are right. But anyway, man, this episode went all over the place. It was a great one. This is I this was a lot of fun. Um anyway, let's wrap things up. Any final thoughts, Ben, for
No, I mean, it's what we've been podcasting since 9, so I'm gonna go take a nap. This is too much work for a Saturday.
All right. Well, everybody, if you're watching this, thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to find me on TikTok, it's at Andy Coons, Koons, spelled just like that. If you want to find me on X, it's at Andy_Coons. You can see my socials at the bottom of the screen. Same with Ben. Check us out. Keep an eye out for that episode of Give Freedom a Chance with Alex Jahovsky and Luca. I'm sorry, I don't remember your last name. So, anyway, peace out.
Bye.